afternoon and good evening to you, wherever in the world you are. Welcome again to TFH. As you know, that's the full 100, aka TFH. Today is Wednesday, the 15th of April, and I'm pretty depressed, to be honest, with the status of the world regarding, especially the two main countries we're following now. Before we get into it, I want to show you guys a video. There's a reason I want to start off with this video. Please have a look.
Thomas Martins of New Jersey, a young man with Down syndrome and a love of birthdays, died on the eve of his 30th. Just 9 days earlier, his mother, Carolyn, also succumbed to coronavirus at just 55.
Reason I've decided to start the show with that clip is I'm going to be talking numbers quite a bit, okay? And I don't want the numbers to just seem like numbers. I want you to imagine there are people, there is a person behind each of those numbers that we discussed today on this show. So hence I showed you that clip from the very beginning. Today's show is all about the numbers, all about testing, all about lockdown, and all about the attempts at the moment of the UK and US governments looking at taking us out of lockdown, which is very scary. It's a very scary thought. So listen, without further ado, let's get to it. I want to start today by discussing a few of the numbers and disclosing something that the government probably will not be happy for me to say publicly, because they haven't said it publicly. And this is what it is I'm going to tell you today. The UK and the US are now the global hotspots for coronavirus, COVID-19. Yes, I've said it. I'm putting it in that way because, to me, if you watched my video yesterday, you would have seen me inform you that the UK government have been putting out figures, leaving out huge statistics from the numbers, okay? And I informed you on yesterday's video that the difference it's making to what they're telling you is as high as 52%. So the numbers you're seeing flash up on your screens and the actual real number, the difference is the real number's 52% higher. I gave you an example of, I think it was the 4th of April, 3rd of April, when they put out a number at 4,093 and the real number was over 6,000. So there was a 2,000 people. This is what I started with that video. There are 2,000 people like the mother and son you just saw, each with a story, each with a family, okay? Each with loved ones, each with neighbors who are going to miss them, who are being hidden from us. And that's unacceptable. I believe the reason these numbers have been distorted in this way is because whereas when China was the epicenter of Asia, all the British press reported that China is the epicenter of Asia. Then Italy became the epicenter of Europe. Italy is now the epicenter of Europe. Then it shifted to Spain. Spain and Italy are now the epicenter in Europe. Then America started to take off. And then it became, America is now the epicenter in the Americas. The reason they haven't been telling you the true numbers is because they never wanted to disclose that Britain can be an epicenter. Well, my friends, let me start with some statistics to show you that Britain is now the epicenter of Europe. They don't want you to know this. I'm telling you this. This is the truth. Right. As of today, the US deaths stand at 26,696. And I'm going to show you on this show why they are dying in droves in that country. Denial from the top leaders, lack of action taken on time by the leaders, okay? When your leaders do not take their actions on time, consequences, huge consequences are paid. So let me recap that number. US deaths today, to date, is 26,696. Now I'm going to give you an even scarier number. US deaths yesterday, remember, no country, I believe, has lost more than sort of the 1,400, I think. I think the highest was about 1,100. I think about 1,100 was the highest we ever saw in Spain, Italy, which overtook China. China never had. I don't think China ever saw a day where there was over 1,000 people. But we are now seeing the UK is now hitting over 1,000. I want to show you this. Take a look at this graphic. Right. This is the same graphic I showed you. Now, if you recall yesterday, they were talking about curve. We've hit the curve. And I told you, keep an eye on my show and you will see that they are falsely, thanks to Trump, leading people wrong. Because all the other states knew that they weren't on a curve. But the federal government run by Trump, if he tells the people who work for him to say something, they're going to say it. And that's what's been happening. Now, as you can see, I don't know if you can see that properly, but they hit 2,500 yesterday in one day. 2,500. And they are still going up. Okay? Let me show you what a curve looks like. This is New York State statistics, right? When you hear me describe, most of you have watched my videos. If you have, you'll see me describe upwards slope. You hear me talk about a little plateauing and then a downward spiral. This is exactly what you call a curve. Okay? You see it started going up. You see you have a few days here where you can say that's a plateau. Now you see the arrow? This is where here is where they expect it to start coming down. So they expect a couple more days of a plateauing before it comes down. Now that's New York State. Governor Cuomo of New York State put stuff in place when Trump decided he didn't want to put stuff in place. He recognized his city was the epicenter in America. And he took action way before, when Trump was still telling people this is a flu, it's nothing to worry about. He was taking action, and that's what happens when you got a good leader. Things, as bad as things could have caught them out, a lot of people have died in New York. However, his timely action has now made them start to see a plateau. Okay? Now, this is New York's hospitalizations in the last 3 days. In the last 3 days to yesterday. So today will be the fourth day. I don't have the chart for the fourth day. However, this is the chart, hospitalizations, okay, in the last 3 days. You see how hospitalizations were at the top here, okay? And the dates, that date would have been the 5th, sorry, that would have been the 30th of, about the 30th of March, okay? Now, you see the difference between then and now is coming down till hospitalizations are this low now compared to the highest there. When you have hospitalizations this low, then it makes sense that you are now hitting the curve. You're now hitting the plateau. One thing goes hand in hand with the other, okay? So that's the US death rate. My friends, let me tell you what the UK's death rate at the moment is, okay? The UK death rate as of today is 12,868. 12,868. Hold on, put your brakes on. That's not the real number. What I've done for you today, I've added 50% of that number onto that. It's geniuses that they are, that everyone who dies in a nursing home shouldn't apply to this number. Why? They've decided everyone who dies in the community shouldn't be added to this number. So what I've done, I've added 50, not 52, but 50% to that number. Do you know what difference it makes to that number? Huge. 50% of 12,868 is 6,434. When you add the two together, our death rate is 19,000 19,302. 19,302. Keep that number in mind. Italy, who we were so open to declare the epicenter of Europe, but we're not so open to declare us the epicenter now. Italy, up to date to now, and they are way down their curve now, yeah? They actually are opening up now. That's how far down their curve they are. So they're through the worst of it. We're nowhere near our curve yet, just so you know. We're nowhere near to start plateauing. I think we're about 2 weeks or a week and a half before we start seeing that. And that's just my estimation, yeah? Italy's total death to date is 21,067, just over 21,000. Call it 21,000. Ours right now is at 19,302. And they're already opening up because they are way down their curve. We are nowhere near our heights yet. Does it surprise you that we're going to be the epicenter based on those numbers? I'll give you Spain's number. Spain's number is even less. We've already passed Spain, guys. Spain's number to date, and Spain was pretty bad, but Spain locked down real quick. They had soldiers out, making sure there was no form of breaking of anything, yeah? Spain's number is 18,579. And they also are on the other side of this thing. 18,579. So with UK, my number, and I'm still chipping a little 2% off that. I only put 50% on. The estimation is we're giving 52% less numbers than we should be giving. If you look at our numbers now with the 50% I added, we're at 19,302. Spain is at 18,579. So we've already passed them. In a few days, we're going to pass Italy, who's at 21,067. So call it 21,000. Okay? We're going to pass them. We're literally less than 2,000 away. 2,000 more people, like the people in that video at the beginning of the show. We're 2,000 more people, like those guys, will pass. Will definitely pass, die. And will then overtake them. So my bad news today, guys, is the press are not telling you that we are now the epicenter of Europe. However, you heard when Italy was the epicenter of Europe. You heard when Spain was now the epicenter of Europe. You haven't heard that the UK is anything like an epicenter, right? Well, you've heard it on TFH first. We are now the epicenter of Europe, guys. We are. Now, I want to move on to the talk of reopening the country. And I know they put us on a 12-week lockdown. I believe that's what it should be. We're in week 3 now. The reason I think we should have that extra 9 weeks is because testing. They still haven't put in place testing. Let me give you a personal story, people. I've told you guys on one of my videos that somebody really close, a family member, was critical. That person was my sister-in-law. I've known my sister-in-law since, I'm 5 years older than her, so I think she was a teenager when I knew her, and I was probably 20, maybe 21. She was 15, 16. She was a girlfriend to a good friend of mine, so that's how I got to know her. And through her, I met my wife, who I've been married. I've known my wife 20 years. I've been married 16 years now. My sister-in-law, that's how close this thing got to me. My sister-in-law was hospitalized, not this Sunday gone, but the previous Sunday, so a week and 3 days now. She was the first we knew was on the Monday morning that she'd been rushed to hospital at 3 a.m. Early Monday morning, but Sunday night to Monday morning at 3 a.m. The ambulance came and got her. As per normal behavior, they took her by herself. Her son, her grown son, who's I think 24, roundabout, who as a delivery driver has been going to work all this time. So it will be credible to assume that her son passed it on to her, and he probably didn't suffer that much from it. But that's not the, but if that was bad, if that wasn't bad enough, that we should have had a system in place where if you ask somebody to go to work, make sure they're tested, make sure there's a way to test them, and make sure they haven't got it and can't pass it on to someone at home. Let's leave that to the side for a minute, because that itself is a cock up. But let's leave that to the side. My sister-in-law left hospital last week, Thursday, after 4 days. We were shocked that she got let out of hospital, to be honest, because she just came off the respirators the Wednesday. So she was on the respirators to help her breathe. She was on that from the Sunday to the Wednesday. My wife was on FaceTime with her. She, at the first couple of days, she couldn't speak because she couldn't breathe. When she spoke, she was speaking like someone who's, you know, finding it hard to speak. Then came Wednesday, she came off the respirator. And then came Thursday, when we called the hospital, when my wife called the hospital, they said she's left. We've discharged her. My wife says, no. My sister that came in on Monday, on Sunday morning, early as Monday morning, she gave the nurse her sister's name again. The nurse went back and checked and came back and said, yes, she's been discharged. Now, bear in mind, when we spoke to her, when my wife spoke to her on a day or so before, they told her she had at least 5 more days to be in hospital, yeah? Right. Now, 5 more days turned into just 1 day. They let her out after 1 day more, yeah? It was so shocking that she was actually out from Sunday to Wednesday, and then Thursday she was out. That, call it Monday, because it was early hours Monday. We were so shocked that this was the case that I was searching for why they would do that. And then that's not the only thing. She's released. No one's come to her son. Her son's still going to work because he's a delivery driver, so he's required to go work. No one's come to the house to test her son. No one's asked her who she came in contact with. None of that. While we are still behaving in this, I'm searching for incompetent way. While we're still behaving in this incompetent way, to open us back up is sending more people like the mother and son you saw at the beginning of this video, sending more people like that to their death. More families are going to miss them. Do you know, this government is behaving like all of the ministers went to the University of Brexit. Let me explain what I mean by that. Imagine there's a University of Brexit, okay? A real University of Brexit. And then there's other types of universities. So if you go to the University of Brexit, you have to work in the Brexit industry. But if you go to other universities, you can be an engineer, you can be a minister, you can be anything you want to be. Our ministers are behaving like they all went to the University of Brexit. And now they got Brexit. And now we're back to the real life situations. They look like they're lost. They look like they're lost. They're making fault. The only person that I have to give props to is the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. He's the only one I will give props to, because his job's, I guess, different. Yeah. However, the rest of you ministers, you're all going on like the only training you have is to do with Brexit. And now Brexit's over. You're all lost. Right. The testing situation. I want to show you the US's testing numbers. And when I say testing, I mean to test the population to see who's got it, who hasn't got it, who's had it, who's likely to go back to work because they've had it. Do you know what I mean? to know this data that you really need to know, because this is so deadly. This is not the flu, and this is not 5G. This is a deadly virus that we've never seen before. To get this data together, to then sit down and look at the data, then start deciding to release people, and certain work groups can go back to work. Certain more other is the second level of essential services. So your shops and stuff like that. New York's even talking about restaurants should only take in a third to begin with when they open. If your restaurant capacity was 60, that you should make your capacity 20 for the next 6 months, and then up into 40 for the next 6 months after that, and then 18 months later, from unlocking, you then go back to your full capacity. These are the plans of the New York governor, okay, Cuomo, because he's making the right decisions based on figures, science, and the right attitude to this whole thing. From that the US so far has tested less than 1%. This data was from 2 days ago. Sorry, it was from yesterday, early hours of yesterday. Less than 1%. Now, you saw the second thing I put up, it telling you the charts, who's tested the most. Guess who's at the top of testing? Germany. They're at the top of testing. I just love the Germans when it comes to efficiency, seriously. Because Germany's death rate to date is 3,592. 3,592. Compare that to us, 19,302. The real numbers. Even if you go by the fake numbers, that's still 12,868. Nearly 13,000. What's Germany's? 3,500, my people. And Germany was the EU. There was all these people from Spain going in and out of the country because their borders are open. Surprise, surprise, an open border gets you only 3,592. Wow. Their borders weren't closed. But yet, it's 3,592 only dead in Germany. Because of the right attitude, my people. The right attitude. And being efficient. And not going on like the only school you went to was a Brexit university. And now Brexit's done, you don't know what else to do with yourself. Right? Germany is at the top, as you saw, of the testing list. Italy, who suffered it, who are now on a slope, now opening up, a second on the list of testing people in their population. That's why they're opening up now, slowly even, because they now have the data. Third on the list of testing, Canada. I won't even bother to tell you, Canada's numbers are so low, you ain't even heard nothing about Canada, right? South Korea was the next on the list, the fourth on the list to test the people. Now, I'll tell you why US is actually on that list, is because of the number. 1% of the US population is near enough the number of the whole of the people in South Korea, right? US population is at 380 million, yeah? So 10% of that is 30.8 million is 10%, 30.8, right? So 1% is 3.5 million, 3.8 million. So the only reason why the US at the moment is actually in fifth is not because they've tested loads of people, is because they have a huge population. Now, we don't have statistics on our testing. I'm sorry to say, people, we do not have statistics on the UK's testing. And from what I'm hearing, they haven't even started that yet. They haven't even started testing the frontline workers. I'm watching a total fail right now. I really am. And it scares the living daylight out of me. Because the fact we have no testing yet, and we have no figures, right, for testing in this country, and then they're going to talk about opening up us back up. Listen, my people, if they decide, if you hear that they're trying to open us back up and send us back out there to die, yeah, we make sure we put up a fight, because that would be totally unacceptable. Now, I mentioned attitude, guys. I mentioned attitude. And the attitude of your leader or leaders gets you out of a terrible jam, a global jam, as what we're in at the moment. The countries who have done well out of this are the countries who know how to rule. Germany, New Zealand's Ardern, Jacinda Ardern, Canada. These countries have done pretty okay. Canada being next door to the US with near enough an open border, you know, driving back and forth. How come the US is at 26,696 and Canada's under 5,000, right? How come we're at 19,308 when Ireland is not seeing that much at all? Now, guys, we need to ask them to put testing in place. We need to refuse to listen to them tell us to lockdown's over until there are testing sites at every tube station or train station, because everybody in this country lives a manageable distance away from a tube station, or a train station. So we want testing sites at all tube and rail stations. We want testing sites at all police stations for those areas that don't have train stations. So you can go to a police station, they set up a testing site at police stations. For other rural areas and for passing people that are passing through the country or who are always on the move, you want them up some petrol stations. Designate some petrol stations, not just in neighborhoods, but also along our motorways. We need testing sites that literally all 65 odd million of us can access if and when we want it. And it should be compulsory, because until we have that data, telling the country to unlock and go back out there can be detrimental to another few thousand. And when I say 1,000, remember, the reason I played that video at the start of this was to show you guys that when they say 2 people died, that's a story. A Down syndrome child and his mom died. Poor guy had to wait 9 days after his mom passed before he passed. That is such a heart-wrenching story, okay? That's why I decided to play that video first, yeah? America's problem is all about fake news. Let me play you this clip about Fox News. I mentioned Fox News and the lying station, why I don't understand why any country. You couldn't have Fox News operate in New Zealand. She would have stamped that out a long time ago.
Fox, which basically shows what they've been saying about this until it really became serious and deaths started to mount up in the United States. This is what was produced by The Daily Show.
This is one of those cases where the more I learn about coronavirus, the less concerned I am. There's a lot of